Good morning, guys. What is going on? How are we? So, we're coming back in for another episode of your favorite podcast, the Better Body Academy podcast. So, guys, if you are coming into this one live, just let me know that you are watching, and we're going to be getting this episode started very shortly. So, I hope you all had a beautiful Easter. Coming back into probably the first work day, so it's good to see you guys back in here and back in momentum. I love it. I love seeing all these names that that pop straight into the podcast. The champions of the academy. Nikki, friend, what's going on, brother? Good to see you in here this morning, my man. We've got Tez is up and at it, of course. The old soldier Tez, loving it, dude. Bobby Gordon, mate. What about the support you got on your post the other day, Bobby? I think a lot of people are riding the coattails with you, my man. Hey, Mikey Bergman, what is going on, mate? I'm back on basically on your time zone, so it's good to see you here, dude. Sonny Harris, my boy in Auckland, what's going on, Sonny? I've noticed you getting really involved. I love it, Sonny. So good, mate. We've got Stevie Byron. Steve, contact me after this. We need to get started in our podcast episode. We've got Jen here as well, all the way from the UK. Jen, how are you, girl? All right, who else? We got Mikey Ilias, King Mike. I like to refer to him as. Fantastic content of recent, Mike. I've been loving your stuff, man. And Danny Brown, my old boy. So lovely to see you, dude. Mwah. Lovely to see you, Dan, when we were back at home, mate. Abby, what is going on, mate? I hope you're good. And we've got Maddie Ball in here as well. Hopefully you're doing some training, Maddie. Guys, I think we are about ready to rock and roll without any further ado. What do you reckon? I'm going to bring the crew in on Instagram, and we're going to get started on this episode. So, guys, this episode, we're going to be talking about approaching fat loss the right way. So if you've got any questions, then we can discuss these questions after the episode. But aside from that, I think it's time to get this episode started. So let's do it. On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. And today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about why you are approaching fat loss in the wrong way. We're going to do a deep dive, and I think this episode's really going to help, particularly to those of you that are not in our Better Body Academy. I'm back here in Vancouver. It's freezing, of course, but the days are long and it's nice. So after kind of getting sunsets at 5:30 back in Australia, we had a beautiful time, but it's sort of light till 8 p.m. now, and I'm super psyched about knuckling down for the next, maybe 3 months until baby boy comes along and joins our family. So guys, let's talk about fat loss, okay? I'm going to try to explain in this episode why perhaps you are not getting results. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the frustrations that I see with going to in-person personal trainers. And of course, that's a generalization, but it's what I see, so I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to hold back from that. And the outcome that I want to kind of get across here, guys, is to simplify fat loss for your journey, okay? So what I want to do is take a step back first. Let's go back to fat loss basics and ask ourselves, so we have some context around this, like, what is fat, okay? Well, fat is large white cells that store under the skin or in and around our organs, and they accumulate when we're ingesting more energy than we actually need on a rough average basis, okay? So it's kind of a little bit like saving money. Let's say your partner was your money manager, and each day he or she gave you $50 towards fuel and lunch, and I can hear a lot of you saying $50, that'd be awesome. But let's say you got $50 a day for your allowance, but you only spent $40. Well, then you would accumulate $10 a day in your pocket, right? Would that make sense? And so with fat gain, that extra $10 a day represents the extra calories that you're taking in, which, because you're not spending, they accumulate in your wallet. Now, the only way to accumulate money in that wallet or not accumulate money in that wallet is if you gave it back to your partner or you spent it at the end of the day. Otherwise, the money would build up. And in fat loss, most of us don't work with this kind of deposit withdrawal mentality. And so we slowly accumulate fat. And then over the course of a couple of years, we look down and we go like, what actually happened? And so despite all the different diets and training regimes that you could follow, it comes down to this one basic pretense that the only way you will lose fat, say it with me, Better Body Academy members, is if you are in a calorie deficit is the only way. The type of way that you get there is just the compliance mechanism. Okay, it's just the way that you get there. But the underlying principle is this calorie deficit. If more people could distance themselves from being attached to the regime and stop like defending the regime and instead just grip this one principle, as a country or society, we'd be far less overweight. So when someone starts a fat loss transformation, right, they usually have one idea in the mind. And correct me if I'm wrong, you might not have started your transformation yet, but the first thing that we think of is, okay, I need to now flog myself in the gym or get going in the cardio, right? Guys, if you haven't started yet, this podcast episode is going to help you. You see, what happens is you're already tired from kids and work, and you're used to crashing out, with a beer and some easy dinner. Then all of a sudden, you've committed to this kind of 5 days a week at the gym, or I'm a failure. And of course, this only lasts a week or two, and that's for two reasons. This approach is not sustainable in the first place, so you just can't keep it up. And the second thing is there's no mindset change that's happened with it. So you're this old guy or girl that created a problem of weight gain, trying to fix the weight gain with the same mindset that created the weight gain. And we go to the gym and we try really, really hard and we flog ourselves and it doesn't work. And of course, what happens is we fall off. And because we fall off, we feel like a failure. And because we feel like a failure, it ruins our sense of self-belief. And then we are off the horse for another year or two. But what if I suggested to you that actually it's not you that's the failure? Like, guys, it's not you that's the failure. It's your system that is failing. Like James Clear says in the incredible book, if you haven't read it yet, it's called Atomic Habits. It's a great book. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I'm going to say that again. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. In other words, you can be super ambitious. I'm going to lose 20 kilograms. That's what I'm going to do. But if your systems don't help you get to that goal, then it's useless. Crystal says, great book. Yeah, it certainly is. Because it goes to the point of, you can have all these great ambitions, but if you don't have a system, that's where you're going to fail. So when it comes to fat loss, there's obviously two ways that we can work things in our favor. Two levers that we can pull, right? We could reduce the amount of food or drink that we're consuming. That's one way. Or we can increase the amount of fuel that we are burning on a daily basis. And that's the other way. And because most of us misunderstand the impact of nutrition on our lives, because we're experts in food, not nutrition, we think that we can outrun our eating. So we take off to the gym, often overcommitting, and then we go as hard as we possibly can until we can't do it anymore and we fall off. Guys, who resonates with that story? I want to know if that's you. If you feel like you're just like, oh man, I try, I can't keep it up and I feel like a failure as a result of it, that is the story. You need to stop this story. Inside of Better Body Academy, we have a system called the fat loss trifecta. Okay? The fat loss trifecta. Working out in a structured format is number 3, not number 1. It's number 3. That means there's 2 positions above it on the trifecta. So let's go to the energy burning side of the equation. And I want to explain why structured exercise is not number one. And I'm garnishing this analogy that I'm going to use to talk through here. I'm garnishing this from James Smith, another online PT, and I think he's brilliant. If I were to ask you what percentage of the total fuel you burn each day would be a result of structured exercise, okay? Put me in the comments the amount. If I asked you how much of the fuel that you burn each day comes as a result of structured exercise, comment the amount that you think it would be. My guess is that if you're fit, you would probably, and you're an exerciser, you would probably say 50%, roughly. That would be the go, right? 50% of the fuel that I burn on an average day comes from some sort of structured exercise. And if you were overweight and a non-exerciser at this point in time, you'd probably say, well, it should be 50%, and that's the reason I'm fat, right? The truth is, both you and your exercising self are wrong, okay? It is not 50% of calories that are burned coming from exercise. And this is really important. I want you to imagine for a moment that you purchased an apartment block with 10 floors. I'm going to give you a simple analogy, okay? 10 floors. Now, these 10 floors collectively represent the amount of calories that you burn in an average day. Okay, so we've got floor 1 to 10, and collectively, that's how much calories you burn in a day. Okay? So you'd probably be shocked if I told you that only one of those floors is the calories represented by structured exercise. One of those 10 floors. And in complete craziness, actually 7 of the 10 floors of that entire complex that you bought would be the calories that you burned doing nothing. Or in Australia, as we like to refer to as sweet fuck all. 70% of your building, the calories are burnt doing nothing. In fitness, we call this your basal metabolic rate. But in a basic sense, what it is the fuel that you burn if you just left your car in neutral, in the garage, without even driving it anywhere. If you just let it burn in the car, in the garage, and just let it on idle, that is your basal metabolic rate. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. And that takes up 7 of those 10 floors in that apartment block. So what we're fighting for when we're exercising is one of those floors, and then 7 of the floors is something that we can't actually change. And in fact, the only way to improve your basal metabolic rate is by building a bigger engine, which takes months and years. It takes months and years. So straight away, guys, if you're watching along and you're feeling like a failure, this should be hitting you between the eyes. Straight away. And knowing this, can you see why it's crazy to overcommit to structured exercise? And then because you're overcommitting, you keep falling off. And because you keep falling off, you keep feeling like a failure and you never actually get anywhere. Can you see why this is a problem? It should be hitting you in the head. In other words, it's like you own that 10-story apartment building and you're spending all your money renovating one floor and then wondering why the entirety of the building is not improving. You're only renovating that one floor and you're pouring all your money into that one floor. And so what do you do when you fail and you fall off? What do? I'm just a failure. I can't keep it up. So what do? You go home and you binge on food and alcohol, feeling sorry for yourself because you're a failure. Guys, I see this with so much awareness from the outside looking in, and it frustrates me that so many people feel like a failure and they keep dropping off. When the reality is, if they just dialed down the intensity and didn't commit so hard to something that's less important, which we're going to talk about in a moment, you'd be successful. It's crazy. So I'm not sitting here saying that you can be a complete lazy ass and just sit in bed and do nothing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that sometimes you're going to need to be a bit flexible on yourself. Okay? You're going to need to understand that you've got a family and you need to be able to not get to things occasionally and not self-sabotage and not start the fuck it spiral. Do you know what I mean by the fuck it spiral? Right? You know when you're a mum and I can see one of our ladies saying, this is a big unlock. Yeah. And someone else in Facebook saying, doing it for a while now. I can't see. So here's the thing. You're a mum. You've got responsibility. You're a dad. You're going to work every day. And you fail to get to the gym and you feel like a failure, so you drop off. But the problem is there's two higher things on the trifecta that are more important. You're just worrying about one flaw. Okay? This is also the reason why I see no point in tracking exercise calories. To those of you that like take your Apple Watch or your Fitbit, it has one good function, exercise related. It has one good function. Tracking your steps. That's it. Stop tracking your calories, because tracking your calories on your Apple Watch or Garmin or whatever it is does two things. It's misleading because it's impossible to predict how many calories you burn. It's impossible to predict. So why take a measurement of something that's actually impossible to predict? But the second thing is it gives you this false idea that because I went to the gym, I can eat back all of the calories that I burned on my watch. But that's based on a miscalculation. So it's just easier to just don't track the calories on your watch at all. Now let's go back to the tower, okay? Just so that you're not wondering at the end of this podcast why I left off an entire floor, okay? And this is going to be one for the guys in the BBA. Well, one floor is taken up by something we call the thermic effect of food. In other words, 10% of the fuel that we burn totally is burned up by the thermic effect of food. That is the energy that we use to pull the fuel out of the food. In other words, our digestion. Some foods have a low thermic effect. In other words, the energy is pulled out easier, so the body doesn't have to work very hard. Some foods have a high thermic effect, like protein. To those of you that are infatuated with protein like I am, apart from filling you up, meaning you're less hungry, the other side to that is actually the body has to burn more calories to get the fuel out of the protein, out of the food. So to break down the protein out of the food, it has to burn a lot of calories. So this is why we advocate for a high protein diet, one of the reasons inside of Better Body Academy. Now, let's go to the real point of this podcast. If a few of you have been following on with the maths, we've said of the tower, one of the tower is exercise, one of the floors. One of the floors is thermic effect of food. 7 of the floors is basal metabolic rate, so you can't do anything about it. So what is the 10th floor? This is the point of the podcast. We're talking about step 2 of the BBA fat loss trifecta, and that is non-structured exercise. It's often abbreviated to something called NEAT, and it basically is anything that is calories burned through activity that's not structured exercise. I'll give you some examples. Walking, climbing stairs at work, running for the bus, making your bed, building IKEA furniture. These all burn calories. But I've got a new perspective where I want to share with you as to why I think this is so important. In fact, more important than exercise at the start of your journey. For the average person, NEAT calories or incidental calories, they represent very little, 10%. And that's worsened over the years because of convenience, like remote control and Uber delivery to our door and gaming. And the more we sit down, the less we burn fuel. But I want you to consider this. The potential of increasing calories burned from NEAT is huge for one reason. You're awake for 16 to 17 hours a day versus exercising for maybe one. So this means that you have 16 to 17 hours to be more active. And the good thing is, for the most part, NEAT is free. It's low injury risk. And so for the average overweight or historically inactive person, it's the most sustainable place to start. It's the place you have to start. If you're carrying 30, 40, 50 extra kilos, all that weight packing on your back, your hips, your knees is trouble. And so this is a great place to start. But something new in this podcast that I want to discuss is an implication in your fat loss transformation and something I've never really explained before. Creating a more overall active lifestyle helps to redefine who you are and how you live your life. Think about that. Creating a more overall active lifestyle. Becoming the guy that walks everywhere or the girl that takes the stairs completely changes and shifts your attitude, doesn't it? I know that this is true because I've seen it in countless BBA members. You know, the group of guys that's meeting a couple of times a week just to walk the foreshore on the Central Coast, they're doing that because it's a created habit now. And I know that this is true in my own life. Today is my 220th day straight of walking 10,000 steps a day. And that's something that I'm really, really proud of. Why is that important? Because I'm leading my academy and guys and girls are following and doing the exact same things and getting on streaks. What does that do for my attitude, my mentality? When I flew back into Vancouver yesterday, despite being tired after a 15-hour flight and zero sleep because I had a baby, carrying all my baggage and a baby in my other arm, I still walked the floor instead of taking one of those travel, I don't know what you call them, like travelator things that they have in the airport where you step on them and you walk, but they walk with you and speed you up. I still took my own steps and overtaking people on the way. My attitude is that I'll leave those travelators for the older, weaker people. Not being critical, but I have the opportunity to walk, and that strengthens my mindset as the type of guy that does hard things, right? Does this make sense? And the knock-on effect to my day, if I can start with hard things, then push through other hard things, become part of that. They become easier to conquer. And as calculated by James Smith, listen up. From a fat loss perspective, it really adds up. If taking the stairs every time I needed a pee at work meant burning 5 calories, maybe just 5 calories. That's it, just 5 calories. But if I did that, 5 to 7 times a day? Over the course of a month, that's 1,000 extra calories I've burnt just by taking the stairs. And you might say, well, who cares? Well, over the course of 12 months, that's 2 to 3 kilograms of fat. If nothing else changed, I'm going to say it again, the 5 calories 7 times a day from taking the stairs to do a piss adds up to 2 or 3 kilograms of fat over the course of a year. And of course, if I do that over the course of the year, be the type of guy that takes the steps or the stairs, or is just active in my lifestyle, well, guess what? I've now built the strength and resolve to stick to a more challenging workout routine without feeling like a failure if I can't fall off. And the more invested I am in my steps streak, the longer I go, the more invested, the less likely I want to break it because it's a streak, the more confident I feel and the more fat I burn. Does this make sense, guys? Now, in this podcast, I've not talked about the biggest secret, rarely discussed by PTs, either because they don't want to talk about it because it's too hard, or they just don't know. And that is, nutrition is the most important thing. That is why it is the head of the BBA fat loss trifecta. Let's go back to the analogy of you buying a 10-floor apartment. In that 10-floor apartment, I can tell you one thing. When it comes to determining how many calories that you take in, it's this hole here that we call our mouth that is all 10 of the 10 stories. That's the reason that most people don't win, is because they're neglectful of their nutrition, or they just don't understand how important it is. Perhaps in another podcast episode, we'll do a deep dive on nutrition and go into a little bit more detail around this. But for those of you that have watched this, I'm hoping that you take away the message that you need to stop the failure cycle of thinking that if I don't get to the gym today, I'm a failure. And if I don't get tomorrow, I'm a failure. Instead, how about we come from a cumulative perspective? If I can get to the gym one day, that's great. If I can get to the gym two days, that's great. If I can get there 2 days this week, but 5 days next and 1 the week after, that's fantastic, because it all adds up. But if you adopt the habits of becoming a healthy man or woman that is just more active in the 16 to 17 hours that you're awake, that's going to have far more impact than being incredibly active in the 1 hour that you're at the gym. Does this make sense, guys? And so if your sense of identity and your sense of self-belief and success is in any way tied to your ability to do things, and of course it is, well then just adopting a practice like being a bit more active and creating an identity around that, like so many people in the academy have, and then using your workouts as cream on the top, that is the way to start. That is the way to be successful. That is the way to stop self-sabotaging so you no longer feel like a failure. Because if you're just going out and being active, that's more than 90% of the people in the world are doing. This is a really important message, guys. I'm going to refer back to this podcast in the future when people say, oh, I'm not doing well and I'm feeling like a failure and things are happening in my life. Neat and improving your overall lifestyle doesn't take that much extra effort when you build the habit slowly and surely from the start. And this is the reason why inside of Better Body Academy, we're trying to rewrite what the fitness industry is giving out to people. Because if the fitness industry could empower more people to feel great about themselves, well, guess what? You feel good about yourself, your mindset starts to improve, you're in momentum, you're more compliant with being active, and long term, that's going to build your confidence to be able to get into the gym and work out and really push yourself and take things to the next level. But you have to crawl before you walk, and it's about creating the momentum first. This is a simple strategy, and this is the reason why most people are fucking up their fat loss efforts. So please, guys, heed this message. Maybe tag someone who you think needs to hear this message inside of the comments. And remember, if you do have a chance to head across and give us a review, I'd more than appreciate that. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast, back live from Vancouver. I'm back in my dungeon. I'm so happy to be here and expect to be pumping out more of these podcasts over the coming months. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.